You know, I kind of love this time of morning getting up. It's always so peaceful and quiet. It's like to start moving before the world gets going has always been a beautiful thing, man. I've been on day shift probably for at least maybe the last 14, 15 years. Yeah, we're currently driving to Atlanta's Jackson Hartsfield Airport. I've been a Delta Airlines employee 24 years. Northwest, I'm original Northwest, but Delta since the merger.
Flex McGee is a ramp agent at Delta.
Anytime you get to see a sunrise, man, regardless of where you are, what you got going, it's just, for me, it always reminds me of a brand new day, brand new opportunities. You get a chance to get out here and make something shake.
Flex handles passenger bags and cargo, putting in the hard physical work to get them between planes.
Right here at the World Lot, it says, America's most awarded employees park here. I don't feel that. I don't know what that even means. So we're not the best compensated. We don't make the most. We don't have the best vacation. Sick time, all our leaves, that stuff's terrible.
Flex is also a leader in the biggest effort yet to unionize ramp and cargo workers across Delta, the only major American airline with mostly non-union employees.
Thousands of Delta workers say they're on the cusp of forming a union for the first time. It would include ramp and cargo agents who get your luggage where it needs to go. Except they're accusing the airline of trying to put a stop to it.
What this job really allows you to do is be out in nature and just feel that fresh air.
A lot of my time is spent crouched inside of these tiny bins that are maybe waist high, trying to move 60-pound bags 20 feet down an aircraft bin. And that's including moving thousands of pounds of mail and cargo every day.
This has been one of the busiest travel seasons in history, so understandably, people want representation to make sure that our rights are looked out for and that all safety guidelines are followed.
You don't always get a lot of recoup time. Like we always like to joke and say we're industrial athletes with no off season, because we do this every day, all day. And in the weather, this week it was like almost 100 degrees here in Atlanta. We were outside.
Flex was part of a union once before when he worked for Northwest Airlines.
The biggest thing it was at Northwest, the biggest difference was having a union, like just being union, having protection, being able to hold the company accountable is it's worth its weight in gold.
When the FTC sanctioned a merger between Delta and Northwest in 2008, it created the world's biggest airline. And that created a headache for both companies' workers.
On the Northwest side, we were union represented, and on the Delta side, they weren't represented.
Both companies had just come out of bankruptcy, and workers at Northwest, members of the Machinists Union, had already suffered to help the company.
Here we are negotiating in good faith during the bankruptcy contract, giving back and trying to keep the company afloat, and they're planning a merger and to take advantage.
So it was tough times with the union. We were fighting to hold on to the things that we had.
Once we understood that the merger was getting ready to happen, we started trying to educate Delta Airlines workers about the benefits of having a union. And during that same time, what you started to get was a divide and conquer from a company that was merging.
The merger comes along and they turned it around. Consolidation caused the industry to get a lot of profits.
Dan McCurdy has worked as a ramp agent for Northwest and Delta for 26 years.
We did get to have an election at that time. It was just pretty much automatic that we're going to have an election to decide whether or not we're represented. So Delta came out, they promised a lot of things to us. They promised to make this a great job going forward. Delta was handing out raises to employees at this time.
So they were making like $20 or $21 an hour when we were making like 17 still.
It did sway people to vote against the union. We lost representation at that time. And ever since then, there's been a large group of employees that have been pushing because we do understand the importance of having a union contract and having a seat at the table.
Without a union, Delta employees have faced declining conditions, including a time-off and sick leave policy that wears them down. Workers currently get only 7 personal days per year. If they get sick or injured for longer than that, workers have to either use vacation days or go on short-term disability, during which 40% of their normal salary is withheld.
And most people nowadays can't live off of that. So that makes it to the point to where you had to decide, am I hurt enough to not come to work? Or like you have to choose between how your body feels versus what your pockets feel like. And I'm telling you, a lot of people are choosing their pockets.
Our safety policies are very clearly written by people in cubicles who do not spend time around running engines and dangerous things where people die every year around this.
And at some smaller Delta hubs, airline workers don't even technically get to work for Delta.
Anytime you start talking about unionizing at Delta Airlines, the first thing people are going to say, if you guys unionize, they're going to get rid of all of us. They're going to turn us all to DGS.
DGS is now known as Unify, with Delta owning 49%. It provides 20,000 part-time, low-paid workers to airlines, including smaller Delta hubs. But even full-time Delta employees themselves often feel like part-time employees these days.
When I was in training, they pretty much said, oh yeah, you'll get full-time in 8 months. People were waiting 4 years.
Now what they're doing is they're limiting the number of full-time hours. In one of the most recent examples of it, Salt Lake City lost about 20% of their full-time hours this past bid. Just no consultation, no discussion with the workers in Salt Lake.
When Delta workers began an organizing drive in 2018, the company responded with an infamous flyer telling workers that they could buy video game systems instead of paying union dues.
That wasn't even the first time they put the flyer out, but it shouldn't have came out at all. You were telling people, instead of taking care of your livelihood, to go play video games. It's poor taste.
Delta is very vocal in their resistance to our union drive. They have meetings with new hires whenever they come in, trying to dissuade them from wanting representation. We have leaflets in our break rooms. They play anti-union videos on our TVs. We're just bombarded with it every day.
We've had in other stations and even here managers telling us to take off our union pins, even though we are allowed to under Delta's advocacy policy, we're allowed to wear pins. We've had managers take flyers out of personal belongings. They've thrown away our flyers. Delta hosts an anti-union website with a lot of really cherry-picked and incorrect information.
The young lady told me that, because I hand out union cards, of course, if I sign one of those cards, my uncle told me that, you know, I'm gonna disappear. Like, she said this seriously. And it was just like, what? Would disappear like poof off the earth? Or, you know, people just don't ever see them again once they sign those cards. How do you combat that type of rumor? You know what I'm saying? I just told her, I'm like, hey, I'm out here handing them out. Obviously I've signed one and I haven't poofed off the earth yet.
I think what really makes this one different from especially our campaign in 2018 is that I think more people are pissed off. Honestly, I think there's another generation that really came in with the buyout.
When air travel all but collapsed during the pandemic, Delta cut hours for workers and then offered them buyouts. Lots of buyouts.
A lot of people took the buyout, and so that kind of cycled out probably a solid 60% of our workforce. And so I think within the last year, at least 30 to 40% of our workforce is 3 years or less. And I think, especially with the labor movement in general, kind of the pendulum is definitely swinging in the public's favor. I think more people are just a little more animated about it, a little more passionate about it.
Delta tried to discourage organizing with a pay raise in April, but workers new and old were not impressed.
We got a 5% raise after they spent about 4 or 5 months really hyping up like, oh, it's gonna be a great raise. Our managers came into break room saying that, oh, this is gonna be a fantastic raise for you. Turned out it was 5%. And 5%, when you account for inflation, it's about 1%, 1.2%. And the real disparity is in this, in that in 2023, Ed Bastian, our CEO, got a 265% pay raise.
These dudes they just stopped paying them $16 an hour or something like that to start. Like, people was like, I can go make this somewhere else. Quality of life at work was down. For even like the most hardcore Delta person, everybody is like, nah, we working, this ain't right.
We have 43 stations throughout the system, and I looked at the living wage in every major metro that Delta has a hub or a station, and then compared it to our pay scale and where on the pay scale you finally make a living wage. And I would say the average is about 4 or 5 years at the very least. Sorry, Boston. If you're in Boston, you're not making a living wage at all.
Ramp and cargo agents are also feeding off the momentum of their coworkers. Delta flight attendants and tower workers are also unionizing.
Doing it simultaneously with flight attendants and the mechanics, I think is really representative of the kind of growing class consciousness.
Now it's more upbeat, you know? And like I said, I think it's because of the coalition. The coalition really helped because you get to bounce that energy off of you, you know, off of each other. When your group has a bad month, but you hear that the flight attendants had a great month, then it's like, oh, okay. Well, let's make next month our great month.
Because they operate under the Railway Labor Act, Delta workers have to unionize the entire company at once.
We're having to organize 18,000 people all at once. Extremely challenging, 40 plus stations. Like, it is difficult to get the word out about this. So we're trying to find inside people to help us and, you know, and to organize from the inside, because that's how you win. We've got quite a few stations that have picked up a lot of momentum in the recent months, and we fully expect to file for an election by the fall.
I told people I'm done talking. Like, I can't talk about this no more. I was done with it. And a friend of mine that I work with, he was like, man, you're not gonna be done till God say you're done. And then I got the call to go and speak at the convention, the AFL-CIO's convention. This was completely out the blue. When I came back from speaking to that, not only did it wake me back up, but I had to come back and tell him that you was right. You're not finished with the guy's assignment until you complete his assignment.
Thank you so much for watching our video. If you'd like to see more stories like this one, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to get more Perfect Union in your feed. And if you have any ideas for stories that you would like for us to investigate, just drop them in the comments below.